almost the end of the year, guys, and also almost the end of the decade. That is crazy to me. But with that said, I do tons of end of the year lists, and this year I'm adding in a bunch of top 10 decades list to the end of this year, because you will get my top 10 favorite films from this year, but you're also going to get some of my favorite films from the decade. And today's list is going to be my top 10 favorite sequels from this decade. This was actually a very hard list. I'm excited to discuss it with you guys. And of course, if I'm missing something that you guys think should be on here, comment down below. Let me know what your guys' list is. And of course, film is subjective. We're all going to think different things. I can't wait to hear your guys' thoughts on this one, and I can't wait for you to comment down below with you guys and hear what and read what your guys' thoughts are, because that's my favorite thing. I might miss out on something and be like, damn, I should have put that on my list. But guys, again, hit that like and subscribe button, comment down below. Without further ado, let's get started. Coming at my number 10 is probably going to be the most controversial pick on this list, and that is Alien Covenant. Now, while I was very fascinated with Prometheus, I've never been the biggest Alien fan in particular. I was more of a Predator fan when I was younger. The thing with this, though, is Prometheus opened up the world for me where I wanted to see more where that story was going. Alien Covenant gets announced. While it is kind of a sort of sequel to Prometheus, kind of a prequel to Alien, I loved it. And I'm not a giant fan of Ridley Scott either, but I absolutely loved his direction and everything that he does within this one. Yes, it does feel like kind of a reboot and a rehash of certain elements from the original Alien film, but I'm kind of for that. It's updated, and while the xenomorph is definitely not in it that much, the mythology and the world building is my favorite thing about Covenant, and why I absolutely was stunned and in love with it at the same time. Michael Fassbender's character is one of the most fascinating characters from this decade, and everything that they kind of go into that route and why he is doing what he's doing throughout the film is one of my favorite moments from it. Very much a minority. People will shit on me all the time on that one, but it's one of my favorite sci-fi films from this decade, and I just can't get enough of Alien Covenant. And coming in at my number 9 is going to be Skyfall. Now, I loved Casino Royale. And ever since then, Casino Royale is my favorite James Bond film. Then you move in. Skyfall is great as well. It's one of the best sequels of the decade as well, because you look at what it does for Daniel Craig's James Bond character, what it added to it. Sam Mendes is a fantastic director. The villain in here is just fantastic. When you add in Javier Bardem playing him, he's scary, he's brutal, but it's one of those characters that really adds to the light of who James Bond's character is and really makes for such a great adversary. Yes, I might love Casino Royale, but Skyfall is the one that really hooked me in to the James Bond, and even though I still think Casino Royale is my favorite James Bond film, Skyfall's itching all the way up there pretty fast. And coming in at my number 8 is The Dark Knight Rises. I am in the minority of thinking sometimes this is my number 1 favorite Dark Knight film. Now, while I do think it is way too long, and I think there are a couple moments that you could have cut out completely, I think Nolan still did an excellent job within here. I love Tom Hardy as Bane, and I'm quite obsessed with it in the way that he does it. I used to be able to do a little bit of please say, Mr. Wayne, That was absolutely horrible. Why did I just do that? And why am I going to leave that in here? Dark Knight Rises. I think it's such a great conclusion to this Batman series that we have followed over the last couple of years, and the way that it ended felt emotional and satisfying. I love Anne Hathaway as Catwoman. I love Tom Hardy in here. I love Christian Bale, and all the conclusions to the series is great, and the third act of this alone is wonderful. Coming in at my number 7 is Creed. Now, I love the Rocky franchise, but we can definitely say that it kind of went down the drain a little bit. Creed brought this back into such a vigorous and ferocious punching of the bag. And I say that because this is actually sometimes might even be my favorite Rocky film. Yes, I know some people don't consider it a Rocky film, but it takes place in the same world, and I do consider it to be in there. I love what Creed did for the series, and I love what Michael B. Jordan brings to this role. I think a lot of what Creed does for this is from Ryan Coogler as a director, who really brings the punches and never stops. It's emotional, and it might be a little bit of a rehash, but I still love every single moment of Creed. Plus the score. My God, the score is just perfect. Coming in at my number 6 is going to be Avengers Infinity War or Avengers Endgame. A little bit of a cop-out on this one. It's a little bit hard for me to choose which one I want in here, but they feel like one big movie. And you gotta add both of them for what it does for the whole entire Infinity Saga, and in general, the first 2 Avengers films and what it adds to it. I actually go as far as to say I don't really care for the first 2 Avengers films anymore. Infinity War and Endgame have these giant stakes, all these characters, and you expect for me to go back to the other 2 and get that same glimmer of special that I got when I first watched them? I mean, they're great, But Infinity War and Endgame had the emotion to it, had all the characters that we followed through for all these years, and also added in one of the best comic book films of all time. And coming in at my number 5 is going to be Star Wars The Force Awakens, one of my favorite Star Wars films. It's so rewatchable. I can watch it all the time. And the year this came out, it was just so much emotion. I remember sitting in the theaters, watching it, and crying because I was just a nerd. I was a geek, and I was sitting there going, I'm in love with Star Wars The Force Awakens. Like, this is great. And I thought what it did so great was it got you back into Star Wars, because Star Wars had been missing for 10 years at that point. And while I liked Revenge of the Sith a lot, the prequels were quite disappointing, and this felt like it was going back to the original trilogy. Some people don't agree with me. That's your opinion. I completely think it's one of the best Star Wars films, pacing wise, energetic wise, and the way that it is and tells a story about Star Wars. Of course, before we get any further into this, guys, I do have some honorable mentions I want to go through, and of course, make sure I want to comment down below, guys. Don't forget about that. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe if you guys are new here, so we can talk movies on a daily basis. And I cannot wait to see what your guys' list is. It's one of my favorite things, reading people's opinions and all that sorts of stuff. But thank you guys again so much for clicking on this. Again, head over to Sandwich on Films if you guys are interested in seeing movies early. And a big thank you to you for clicking on this video, and a big thank you to my Patreon supporters, because without you, I wouldn't be able to do this. So my honorable mentions, we have 22 Jump Street, The Raid 2, one of the best action films of all time, Fast 5, the film that actually made me care about the Fast and Furious franchise, Kung Fu Panda 2, Spider-Man Far From Home, and of course, Jurassic World. Again, what Force Awakens did for the Star Wars franchise, I thought Jurassic World did for the Jurassic Park franchise. We're not going to discuss Jurassic Fallen Kingdom, though. And I also would probably put Terminator Dark Fate in there. I am in the minority, but I really liked it, and I love what it did. While it's not as great or even close to as great as the first two, I think it's fun. It's fun, and I liked what it did for the story. Some people would disagree with me, but whatever. Let's get to my number 4, which is Mad Max Fury Road, one of my favorite, probably, honestly, top 3 action films of all time for me. Love this film, totally rewatchable, and it was funny, when I first saw it, I didn't know how to feel about it. And I'll even be honest, this was my first Mad Max film. I really did not know how to feel this film. Walked in, I'm like, what is this world? What are these people? Didn't feel the best about it. Kind of felt a little awkward in it, but kind of fell in love with it at the same time. I don't know what it is about it, but I kept feeling so fascinated about it that once I left the theater, I kept thinking about it. And I kept thinking about it, and I kept thinking about it. And then I went and dived into all the older Mad Max films and fell more in love with Fury Road. George Miller, he deserved every Oscar win that year for Mad Max, and I still think that should have won Best Picture that year. That film was excellent. It was a masterpiece, and it's one of the best action films of all time. It's wild, it's bonkers, but it's ambitious, and he went for it. And I acclaim that, while at the same time acclaiming how wonderful the action is in there. It's so stylized and so excellent that it just kept me on the edge of my seat the whole entire runtime, and it's just one giant car chase. And it just never gets boring. Coming in at my number 3 is going to be Blade Runner 2049. As a fan, not a fan of the very first Blade Runner. I think it's a good movie. I appreciate it more than I like it. This one gave me everything I wanted to. And I think Denis Villeneuve is one of the best directors working today. I think every single one of his films is close, if not a masterpiece. And Blade Runner 2049, besides the length, I think that's the only issue with the film, is the length. This film is drop-dead gorgeous because of Roger Deakins. It's also almost perfect. And coming from someone who's not a major fan of the first Blade Runner and making me fall in love with the new Blade Runner and seeing everything that, it touches on about humanity and society and these characters that we follow along in here, opening the world to Ana de Armas, who's incredible in here. Ryan Gosling's great. Harrison Ford gives probably the best performance in his career, honestly. Top 3 of his career. It's absolutely wonderful what they did with Blade Runner 2049, and I wish we would have gotten a sequel. I know we'll probably never get a story told in this world again, if not for a very long time, but I loved what they did with 2049. I was so engrossed the whole entire time. Coming in at my number 2 is going to be Logan. I loved Logan to death. It's funny to see how each Wolverine film got progressively way better than the last, and Logan was just so satisfying. It's so emotional. And it's brutal. It's everything I truly wanted it to be. And it's one of my favorite comic book films because of that. It's satisfying. It's, again, using the word emotional. If you didn't cry at the end of this, who are you? The action sequences are perfect. And a lot of that goes because of James Mangold's direction. You can feel the passion coming off the screen between him and his direction. And, of course, Hugh Jackman's performance in here. And even Patrick Stewart. Again, this film, another film that was kind of snubbed by the Oscars. It got the script nomination, thank God. But I thought Hugh Jackman, and especially Patrick Stewart, deserved the nomination for this movie. Of course, coming to my number one, you guys know what my favorite film franchise of all time is. It's Toy Story. So, Toy Story 3 and Toy Story 4 are my number one. Now, people were like, oh, I hate Toy Story 4. I don't get it. I think Toy Story 3 was the perfect conclusion to Andy's story, and Toy Story 4 is the perfect conclusion to Woody's story. And what it has to say about growing up, especially within the third one, and then what it has to do with moving on with a character and moving on when you notice that your purpose in life has changed now. That's what 4 does. And you having to rediscover what your purpose is the most beautiful thing of this decade that I've seen. Toy Story 4 I've seen probably almost 15 times already. And the third one, don't even ask me how many times I saw that already. I just love Toy Story so much. And again, this is very much my personal choice. You might not agree with me, but 3 does such a great job closing out Andy's story, and it's one of the best Prison Break films. It's hilarious. It has great character development. Every character gets a sting to shine with, and even though Toy Story 4, I do understand they do sideline a lot of the original characters to the back. I think what it does with the new characters, what it does for that theme of rediscovery for every single person in here, Bo Peep, Woody, and Buzz, and even some of the smaller characters in there, Gabby, Duke, Kaboom, it all focuses around one big thing and one adorable new character, Forky, and it just ties in perfectly into the Toy Story world. I think, honestly, if you come to me and say this film was not needed, blah, 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 I think you were just going in there with preconceived notions. I can't imagine someone walking out of this and being like, that was terrible, because it was perfect in my opinion. I know I know film is subjective. I can't imagine. I know I've met people who don't like this movie. I think it was needed for the story, and, you know, Toy Story is my favorite franchise. I love these characters. I want more of it. Maybe not a Toy Story 5, maybe a short story or some shorts or a show on Disney Plus. I'm all for it. But I'm obsessed with these characters. But guys, that is my end of the year, my end of the decade list for top 10 sequels from this decade. Guys, make sure to comment down below. Let me know what your guys' thoughts are. Did I miss any? Did I not? Let's discuss them down below, guys. Thank you guys again so much for clicking on this. I know some of you guys are probably going to say Winter Soldier's another one, though. That's a great one as well. Almost made it in here, but I didn't want to include too many MCU films in this lineup, of course. But guys, seriously, you guys are seriously all the best. I love all the support you guys have been giving me. Next year is going to be a big year, guys, so make sure to hit that like and subscribe if you guys are new here. And of course, until next time, stay classy.